I'm going to give it some time for a second because it has like some latency to load in to LinkedIn. And then I'll cut all this beginning shit out. It does tell me what the live count is over here. It's interesting.
Nice.
Won't be the first time I've played to an empty room.
All right, here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Strictly From Nowhere. I'm your host, Justin Abrams. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cause of a Kind. And we, me and that guy, build software and websites for you. And so first and foremost, most important thing of the day is happy birthday, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Dude, absolutely happy birthday. I wish you forward to extraordinary, many, many more, and many happy, healthy years ahead of you, dude. We appreciate you incredibly. And a small token of my appreciation is bring you on the podcast and let me try and capture a little bit of your excellence for today. But on the show, of course, for today, we have Matt Ramos, who's the software delivery manager and the common thread between all projects here at Cause of a Kind. And of course, the CTO, Mike Rispoli. The license plate says so. New York State issued license plate. The CTO. Welcome, fellas. Welcome.
Thank you. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yes. and part-time comedian.
Yeah.
It's fire. It's fire. Well, the topic I think for today is really a valuable one. And I think for a lot of people that are kind of building anything in the software and web space, and it's something that we differentiate ourselves on extremely here at Cause of a Kind, which is the software delivery program, which is somewhere in between the customer success realm, project management realm, product manager realm. And, we've created like this idea. I don't even know if it's like a true role that you could like go and get another job for tomorrow, but it's really software delivery manager because it encompasses a bunch of different skill sets. I call you a little bit of a unicorn. And, I think you really have owned this role. And I think our clients really value it. I think the team of engineers behind us all really value it. And this is really your brainchild. And Mike and I are here to kind of support the program that you've created. But I think my goal for today is really to talk about what does best practice look like from your perspective? Where are the pitfalls that founders should avoid or people building software should avoid, and kind of what derails a project? I think we can kind of look at the dark side a little bit of our program because there's more to learn in the ways that projects get off the rails or even fail than there is in like what makes a project successful. I think that chemistry is like magic when it happens, but there are so many different things that are in our way that can hurt a project, that can kill a project and derail a project and so forth and so on. So, Matt, welcome to this episode of Strictly From Nowhere. I'm stoked to unpack your story around software delivery management and what you've done with the program here. But I'd love to kick it off with you telling a little bit about your career path, maybe even how you ended up here at Cause of a Kind, and we'll get going from there.
Totally. Again, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it. Well, I've been super lucky to be surrounded by people in the project management space, in the product space, in my history. I started off in a support role, and I think I am still in a support role. That's my biggest take with this. People who come in management but lead from behind instead of leading from the front are not going to get a lot done. My dad is a carpenter, and he always had this saying, which is, if you don't know what somebody is doing, you can't tell them what to do. I can't say I know what people are doing in a technical role, but I can at least understand the effort it takes to get there. So I drew a lot of that in my past. I started off again in a support position where I was in a operation center. We would take in calls about this particular software, And I got so good at managing this, like understanding this proprietary software, that I started just suggesting what changes can be made to it. I started training folks on how to use it. And from that point, they just gained enough trust in me to say, if you know the software well enough, why don't you just visit our clients and teach them? Why don't you visit our tech team and create a backlog for us? So that was honestly a lot of trust for someone who started off in a technology role at the age of 20. And now I'm 29 and I'm still in this technology role. And I'm pretty happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, and your career trajectory is really an interesting one. And I think the way that you found Cause of a Kind, I think you quite literally found us. You took some advice from somebody we share in common and mutual. Shout out to Carolina Luna,
Shout out.
who told you to go to this little old event. Shout out to Long Island Technologists. We have our 14th one happening tomorrow night, and you've been integral to helping us build that community. But you kind of took a chance, showed up in a suit. I'll never forget that. And here we are. It's like more than a year later and been cooking. So, I think that really is testament to folks that are looking for job experiences, looking for new contacts, looking for new network opportunities, getting out and about, shaking hands, making a first impression, kind of talking about your ability to be adaptable and, your interest in somebody's business or whatever they're dealing with. Shout out to you, man. You paved your own way, and Mike and I saw some magic in you, and here we are all this time later. So yeah, you have a heck of a career trajectory. Now I want to talk a little bit about like, what do you envision as like your role and responsibilities here at Cause of a Kind as a software delivery manager?
So there's a lot of parts of the role that I like to encompass together. One of them being making sure the software is delivered on time. So being aware of the deadlines that we have, being aware of the backlog that we have for each client, um, and then being aware of client satisfaction, and then being aware of developer satisfaction. You know, how how they both perform is absolutely parallel to this kind of movement. Mike, you're at the forefront with me with a lot of projects. I know that we've had moments in projects where if a developer is not happy, you're not going to see anything moving that quickly. So it's what can we do to make sure that they're completely unblocked? How does the process have to change? Do we have to kill stand up? Is that what you have to do? We did it. We killed stand up. Just changes like that can be minimal for one person, but can make it move smoothly.
I think what's interesting about that, and Mike, you could probably talk about like all the different types of teams and types of businesses that you've worked on and how like the process of delivering software differs between like enterprise business and greenfield startups and website land. And I think all of that is really kind of important. What I notice is that we have like this core ethos here, which is like the customer experience is paramount. The developer experience is really important here too, but the customer experience is super paramount. And that means that we are adaptable and shape the program to meet the customer where they need to be met. And I think, Matt, you're really good at that. Like we have like some brilliant basics here. You can talk a little bit about what are those things that are just like the same continuously. That's the playbook that we issue across all customers. But like at the core of it, we really aim to deliver a unique original program to each one of our customers. But I'd love to hear from Mike for a second, because dude, you've been through the gamut. You've built everybody else's dreams in all sorts of different levels. You've been at large enterprise companies. You've been at successful unicorn startups. You've been in agency life. You've been in small business. Like, what are some of the things? Let's go from a dark side perspective. What are some of the things that challenge projects or even kill projects?
Yeah, I think I think that the first thing is sort of, why do we focus on the customer, right? Is if the customer is happy, generally the developers are more happy, even if they're not as interested in the project. As long as you can see that you're like providing value to somebody in their life and they're happy, generally the customer's treating you well because they're happy, and generally you feel like you're bringing value to someone else, which is kind of the key to being satisfied in any job, right? Like regardless of what you were doing, a lot of people think it's like you do this because you love technology, or you do this because you do a job because you love the thing you're doing. I think ultimately if you do the thing you're doing in service of somebody else and they genuinely appreciate it and you feel valued, the job itself can matter a little bit less, you know. So it's like working for a great restaurant on the way in the wait staff. You know, we use that analogy all the time. When you work for a great team and the customers are super happy, and I use this example because I say like the manager of this specific restaurant that I worked at was somewhat abusive in some in some ways, very very strict, very on the money, but the customers were incredibly happy, and the team was really psyched that it felt like we were winning all the time. So I always say that sometimes, even though it can be rigorous and it can be hard and there can be like tough deadlines, long hours, that kind of stuff, generally, if you're winning the game, people tend to be happier, or at least the people that are happy here and the type of team that I want to build. Nobody's happy. Like you can have a pretty stress-free development team and no rigor, no deadlines. Everybody's kind of chilling out. But then like the customers are a little less happy because they don't feel like they're getting the attention they need. Or maybe you're not raising the VC money you thought you were going to raise and nobody's making enough money, like that's being unsuccessful isn't great either. So you have to find a balance, but sometimes it means there isn't a lot of balance for periods of time. And so we have to contend with that as an agency a lot more than others, because you kind of run through these feast and famine cycles where there's a lot of projects and a lot of deadlines and everything kind of seems like it's coming down at once. And I find that really to get the most performance out of the team, you really have to think about this idea that, hey, this isn't forever. This is a period of time that's like this, and you need to kind of try and push through so that you don't drop the ball at the 1 yard line. And we've been there before too, where like it felt like every project was dropping the ball at like the 5 yard line. It was like right before launch and things were just falling apart. And if people can kind of run that ball into the end zone and really kind of keep up the rigor through that period, the customer's happy, the workload drops off, the next project comes, but it's usually not starting right away, or we're hunting it down, then the stress begins for the sales team at least. So that's kind of the way that I think about this is really, the developer experience has to be good, but that is good when the customers are happy, or at least it's better when the customers are happy. Yeah.
It's a good segue because, Matt, you have a formula. You and I have really worked on that formula for quite some time now to try and identify what our version of those brilliant basics that lead to an overall super high quality customer experience. Reveal the secret sauce, man.
Yeah. Process is king. Kicking off, getting that requirements document, getting the definition of done, immediately setting up the next meeting, having that regular meeting cadence. Justin says something that we like a lot around here, which is you only have the time to meet your client once a week, 52 times a year. 52 times a year, what kind of value can you deliver in that amount of time? And if you can't meet them in that time, then try to still deliver that value. So getting agendas before the day starts, getting meeting recaps, something as simple as a recap afterwards makes clients incredibly happy. They don't have to worry about taking notes. They can be more themselves during the calls. It's huge. It's incredible how much that's appreciated. It's a very small thing.
We take it for granted because it's just like our daily life. And I for one definitely think about this a lot. But you're one person juggling a lot. Like, dude, you have shipped more software this year than most engineers have shipped in their career. Yeah. Like, if you think about that for a second, like we're really blessed here at Cause of a Kind. We ship a lot of projects often. And it's less about shipping things, like the delivery side of that equation is really important, but delivery is continuous. It's just the delivery of goodwill. It's the delivery of hope. It's the delivery of a task. Of course, the ultimate delivery is we ship to production. You're live, And then there's the next phase of what happens after all of that. Like, it's very, very common that we remain with that client what feels like in perpetuity. There's never less software to build than today. You know, Mike, you always talk about this. Like, there is always more software to build. There's always an update that you can push to your website. Of course, the type of business matters, the goals matter, all of those things. But like, this idea of continuous delivery, that just like reigns true. So, you know, in your perspective, I don't know if you really knew what you were getting yourself into some time ago and when you first joined us,
Yeah.
but like, what is it like to juggle this many projects, this many personalities, this many engineers? You got me and Mike. It's two bosses with bad news some days, you know? So like, what's the equation from your perspective? And like, how do you continue to boil it down to running a very clean and effective program?
There was a ramp up. I don't know if you remember at first, you know, you had me on just 3. I was used to being on 3 clients, and then you got me on 4 and 5. And by the end of it, I was 10 at a time, you know. Now I don't even know how many we're running in perpetuity, but it's propped up by process. I see it on the calendar. I know it's coming. It's pretty great.
So what do you think makes for, again, I like contrarian, I like the dark side. And I think for like the audience, the more valuable side is not what makes a good program. What are some of the things, because no bullshit here, we get punched in the face all the time.
Yeah.
Stuff goes wrong all the time, and it's about how we respond to it that makes us great. But what are some things that you contend with that derail a project, that maybe just flip a personality, like was great yesterday, but something happened overnight? So like, what are some of the challenges that you see in various projects that folks should be aware of and can come prepared for?
One of the biggest things is managing expectations and understanding scope creep. Clients are generally understanding when it comes that delivering software takes time. However, you can't just tell them you can't do something and not kind of give a why, you know, but if you lay it all bare, being completely transparent will help that. But sometimes not always. But scope creep is, I think, the biggest thing that will trip us up, where all of a sudden we were supposed to deliver 3 features, maybe 4 pages, and now it's 10 pages. And it's like, whoa, wait, hold on. How do we manage this expectation? Because the reality is perception is reality. And the reality is we didn't get there in time. But having a plan for the next step is more important than getting something out there. It's how are you going to get this next thing out there? And as long as you have something planned on how you're going to continue, you'll manage the expectations.
You know, I think one of the things that separate us again from our peers and colleagues that are in this industry running similar programs, the way that we've designed our customer experience allows for things like scope creep to happen almost intentionally. I want people to think creatively. I want to remove the boundaries of projects and let people just think about what's their killer feature or what's their defensible mode, or if you do need a new page on a website, like, why should I put a barrier in place of that? But it is how we field that. And it is how we manage those expectations and queue those tasks and help customers prioritize. So I want to give the question to Mike, actually, because Mike and I came up with this program before you were even here. And the program works, man. Like, it's a reason why people select us. And so, Mike, what were some of the historical reasons that didn't work, that usually crush businesses like ours, and that allow our customers to continue to reprioritize, remain agile on projects, allow us to do things like accommodate scope creep without flinching? And so what are some of the things that like you and I contended with over the years that led to the current style of program that we have?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just what we contended with. It's what I experienced at every single agency that I had worked at before this. And really the process, let's start with the process at most agencies. The standard process is somebody comes in with the PRD or an RFP type document. You scope it out. It's usually a kind of a bunch of business people that write up all of the features that are needed for this thing. They put it into a big document. They send it to developers, and the developer does something like this. and tries to just guess how many hours it's going to take them to build off, to build this, to build that. They put hours on it. They multiply that by some number. They add a little fat to that because they figure who could be wrong by this margin. And that's like the standard kind of practice that you'll see. That was like the traditional agency model. And so you'll quickly learn that now you're dealing with a sticker shock issue with a customer, because you're like, okay, it's going to be 200 grand, right? Because, and then you have this back and forth, and it's your word against this other agency's word. And there's always somebody that's going to come in lower. There's always someone that's going to come in higher. And what does the customer ultimately do? They just kind of pick who they like in the middle, right? They don't want the cheapest. They don't want the best. They kind of want the middle. And it's sort of a very interesting, it's agency by crystal ball, and everybody pretty much runs this way. And then when you get into the project, you get into this position of like trying to stop scope creep. It's all we ever hear about is scope creep, because there's inevitably something you didn't capture in the process. It not just one thing, you probably didn't capture 40 things in the process. And you're hoping that, you can basically build all of that, and you put enough fat in the time frame to account for all of those things. Right. And, so ultimately, when we came to this agency, we started the same way. We tried to run the business the same way it had always been done. And I started to realize scope creep was like gravity. It just exists. It was, stop fighting it. It's never going to happen. The thing that you were always trying to do is you try and convince the customer that they're happy enough with phase 1 to let's start a phase 2 and a phase 3 and a phase 4. And so I sort of was like looking at that. And we said, well, what if we productize the service almost like a subscription? And instead of charging these exorbitant rates, we came up with a lower monthly rate that people could kind of just sustain for a year. And we will work in smaller chunks, which is actually Agile at its heart. The problem is Agile was something that I had always worked in at product organizations, like inside of a company, like when I was when we're building a single piece of software or a startup. It never really worked for agencies because you constantly had to pitch and you had to come up with a price. And we decided we just were not, it took us a few years to like not succumb to that anymore, where we were like, no, we're not going to get sucked into giving you a single price. What we're going to give you is 1 month, and in fact, we've even done 1 week. We've done like the smallest unit of time that a customer was willing to deal with, to deal with. And we're like, listen, let's just show you what we can deliver in this tiny little sliver of time. And if you're happy with it, you'll continue with us. If you're not happy with it, you won't. But it also puts the customer with a little skin in the game, because what used to happen also with the bigger agencies is the agency goes upside down. And now they're forced to service a customer that they're not making money on. And the bosses are forced to pay employees that are very expensive. Let's like not lie. Engineers are expensive. Even if you go overseas, they're expensive because they run the clock up. So it doesn't matter how you look at it, whether you're going overseas or you're onshore and you're paying a high hourly rate, the engineering gets expensive. You're losing money. And when it was me and you, it was like, that was a very stressful position to be in, because we're funding this thing out of our own pockets with basically no savings and young children. And so this is not like, I'm not like Ogilvy, that can just absorb giant costs. But no agency can deal with that. And I've seen that play out over and over again, where the client relationship gets strained and it's got this like money component to it. Whereas if you say, hey, listen, let's find a budget that you're happy with, where we can deliver value that you are exorbitantly happy with. So I'm always looking to deliver like 10x the value of what they feel like they've spent on that. And everybody's happy. We're happy. And also we don't help you if the agency goes out of business, right? If I get 3/4 of the way through your software or 90% of the way there and I go out of business, that's not helping you either. Nope. So that's not a great position to be in. So we wanted to create this relationship where the agency and the customer were kind of in like this symbiosis, and nobody felt like they were fighting each other. And at the end, at the heart of it, fixed scopes had to go. So we went with this month-to-month program, and that's the way we've done it. And we offer these 2 tiers, which is like the slow speed and the fast speed. One is like, hey, I have a small amount of features and I just want to continue to develop them. And we throttle it to make sure that we're always moving. And there's the fast pace, which is, hey, I do have a deadline and I need you to put all the resources you got on this thing in a short period of time. And then we do that also. So we do actually have deadlines here. But once you stop fighting scope creep and accept it as the nature of things and realize that hundreds of, probably thousands of agencies have gone out of business trying to fight scope creep or to raise their rates enough that scope creep was virtually impossible to become to go upside down on, really, you could actually deliver a decent customer experience. So it really came down to getting the business model right first, and then once you have that developed, you get the right people on the bus, of course, which is a totally different, just another topic that we could go into. But I really think that it was us getting the business model right, embracing Agile as an agency. And then the other thing is scope creep is not a bad thing. These are things that this is people who want more work. They want more of what you do. They want to put more mods on their car. Yes, I want that. I just don't want to be doing that at cost or below cost. Like people got to pay for those things. So you had to create a program that was right for that.
And what's super interesting about how we run that subscription service is folks will come in and you can tell that they've been burned by agency life before. They come and they go, listen, I don't want to do this for any more than 1 or 2 months. Like I just need the bare minimum done. And then they'll get to the end of that motion and they'll say, can we do more? Why not? And they're happy with it. They're happy with that motion now. And it's so interesting to see someone kind of set their guardrails down because they've been burned before.
What I would love to get into a little bit is we don't do this in a vacuum. We the three of us are having conversation constantly all day long about every single project. But Matt, what happens on Mondays?
On Mondays, we have our weekly burn down.
And so what does burn down constitute? It is not a bad thing. It's not like I'm chopping heads or cutting clients or anything like that. What does that allow us, the three of us, to do on a Monday morning?
We just get together as if we were in an office building and we take a look at the book of business, open it up, and just go down line by line. What's going on where? Where are we? Where's the client? How are they feeling? What are we going to do within that week and then within that month? Do they have a roadmap? Can we look further? The further ahead we can look in a project, the more comfortable we feel in it, which is nice.
I think one of the challenges that we always have with the volume of customers at all sorts of different tiers, everybody's got different spend requirements, everybody's got a different team that's assembled for them, is the visibility across the book. And we're always looking for the challenges. Those are the things that we can solve for. It's great to know that a customer is like fully in the green, but it's one thing to know that like a particular task is in the red, because an accumulation of red problems leads to a red partnership. And, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but we are firefighting on a daily basis, but particularly on Mondays to try and get ahead of any problems. And that is where like the plan of attack begins on Mondays. We like specifically charge the problems that are existing within the book or within the team or at the client level or anything like that. And also we do it outside of just the book of business at an organization level. What are the things that we need to focus on? What are our challenges? Are we burning too hot? Is the pipeline running low? Do we have events coming up that we need to collectively prepare for? Are we traveling? Like all sorts of different things that like we just need to line up on because we're all kind of symbiotic and reliant on each other. So yeah, Monday morning burn down is definitely a piece of that software delivery program that we really amplify. Now I want to take you into website land just for a second. It's arguable that websites are software. We can talk about that at some other time, but I think there is a difference in the way that we run website delivery program from software. When I think about software, I think about, we're either doing like revitalization projects, we can do modernization, we can do greenfield, we can do innovation projects, all sorts of cool things that we can do in software development land. When we think of websites, now we start thinking of like redesigns. Now we start thinking of like continuous maintenance from like a growth development perspective. Now we start thinking about, replatforming for people, like total migrations. And so there's a little bit of a difference. And I'm wondering if you're going to see it the way that I do. And I'd love Mike's perspective. But like, as we think about customers that are in website land versus software land, does that change your program at all?
You know, it it does and it doesn't. It does and it doesn't. People who are in website land, they generally want something out by a certain date. Websites are meant to be seen. Software is meant to be used, but websites are meant to be seen, and they usually have a certain date they have to get seen by. So that'll tend to be a little more driven by deadline, as opposed to a software which someone wants to get out when it's ready. And software will never be ready. There's always going to be something else you want to add to it. But you'll see a lot more website land being driven by deadline.
You know, what I also find with websites and versus software is there is a different technical acumen.
Mhm.
You know, for websites, for the most part, like if we're talking about enterprise grade website, let's think e-commerce style, enterprise level customer, it's a very savvy point of contact, very savvy customer. They really are like, they know exactly what they want. They know the value that it'll drive to the business. They kind of connect all the dots. They just need somebody to implement and develop. You also have the other kind of small business motion. They have a big vision. They like know what they want to be represented as. They know their brand identity. They know, like, various specifications about their business, and they can really help us to understand, from even from a design perspective, what are we thinking about imagining to build. In software land, you have like two options. You're either deeply technical or not at all. And so for me personally, I find that the ability to deliver excellently in website land, that's really just about like the dance routine between the customer and us. I think we meet customers at the level that they need to be, and we're lucky to have the gamut of different types of experience levels on there. In software land, that's really kind of where you have to deploy a different set of skills, because if you have somebody deeply technical, you, like me, are not deeply technical. Like, I know enough to be dangerous, but I also know enough to get myself into a lot of trouble all the time and make false promises or have a misconception about how something works, and then I got to get bailed out by the CTO. Then you also have the other side, which is like totally non-technical. Maybe somebody's building something because they spent their career in a space and like they're good at that career, but they found a gap that software could fill, but they have really zero empathy of what it takes to build that piece of software. And so I'm wondering, is there a difference between the way that you manage all these types of personas? Do you have to modify yourself, your program? Is there anything that you're doing special for these types of individuals?
Totally. I mean, the program is built in a way that's completely flexible, and that helps a lot. Some folks like just an email, to get information across. We for tooling we use Basecamp. Basecamp is incredibly helpful for us because it's just a very simple task list. Those of you who know Jira know it to be very complicated. Whereas Basecamp is just, here's what's in progress. Here's what's blocked. Here's what's ready for review. You can comment inside the tickets. Um, and people love it. Some folks like to be a little more handheld in their approach, and they're on Slack with us. They're pinging me directly. They're pinging the open Slack directly, and again, it's completely easy to have that communication, and it's whatever level someone prefers.
The last kind of topic that I would love to touch on is, we all ran this business before the advent of AI really becoming a part of the way that we run our business operationally, how we manage internal teams, how we deliver on software. And so I don't know if we want to talk a little bit about how we're leveraging those tools from a development perspective, but I am really interested in talking about how we leverage these tools to deliver. And so what are some of the things that you're using? What are some of your processes that rely on AI, from tools to research to fast tracking design concepts, like whatever you can think of? How has AI changed the role from just a year ago where it really wasn't even mainstream and for us to use?
Yeah. One of the bigger things is before we go into a development process here, especially for website land, we'll go through a design process. And before I even take it to design, I take what their needs are, I take what their branding guides take us, and I'll throw it into V0, Vercel's V0. And more often than not, they will accept that as a form of design that can take us directly into development. It saves an incredible amount of time, saves weeks of time. Um, at the same time, that's just for design and development. I'm also using Fireflies. We use Fireflies AI to record every single one of our meetings. I take those, and those are what creates our meeting recaps. Those are what creates our, agendas for the day. Again, it saves an incredible amount of time. AI is a pivotal part of what we do here at Cause of a Kind, in development and in delivery.
I also think you use it in a component of like task management and like breaking down tasks, adding color to tasks, utilizing these tools from a research perspective. Like we'll be on a call with a customer, a question will come up. 2 seconds later, you not only have the answer, but you have the API documentation or whatever you may be looking for. And so the ability to leverage the tool to provide like an excellent real-time experience, that's kind of changed. That's changed over the last year. I remember a few years back, this stuff would be super manual. I wouldn't be able to give answers at all. Now I'm shipping full body software in days and weeks, where it used to take months and maybe years historically. So the way that this has just changed the game, the way that we're allowed, that we're enabled to provide value to people, to provide acceleration without a loss of quality, it's really just changed not only the technical side of the business, but also the non-technical side. Matt, I appreciate you so much, man. I can't thank you enough for joining the episode. You run a heck of a program here. You're the common face between all of our customers.
Thank you.
I wish you the happiest of birthdays. And of course, forward to extraordinary.
Forward to extraordinary. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Of course.